AITA for refusing to cover my girlfriend's half of the rent after she quit her job on impulse. I have been with my girlfriend Sarah for about 3.5 years now, and we have been living together for the last 2 years. For the most part, things have been fine. Not perfect, but fine. We have always split everything pretty much right down the middle when it comes to rent, utilities, groceries, and anything else related to our shared expenses. Neither of us is rolling in cash, but we make it work. I work full-time in a decently stable job, and she had a job in an office that she has always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with. She would complain about her coworkers, about her boss, about the general culture of the place, but it was a paycheck, and she kept going back. That is, until about a month ago. She came home from work that day in a mood I can only describe as absolutely seething. She stormed through the door, slammed her bag down, and started pacing back and forth in the living room like she was about to spontaneously combust. When I asked what was wrong, it was like opening the floodgates. She went off on this long rant about how her boss was a complete idiot, how her team was useless, how every project she was working on was a disaster, and how the whole environment was sucking the life out of her. I had heard variations of this rant before, so at first, I was just kind of listening and nodding along, assuming this was the usual vent session. But then, out of nowhere, she dropped the bombshell. She had quit. Not put her notice, not started looking for other options, just quit on the spot. No backup plan, nothing lined up, just quit. I was stunned. I asked her what her plan was now. She shrugged like it was no big deal and said she would figure something out. That was the whole plan, figure something out. At first, I tried to be supportive, even though the whole impulsive nature of it set off some alarms in my head. I get that jobs can be miserable. I do not think anyone should stay somewhere that is damaging their mental health, but at the same time, we have rent, bills, and responsibilities. Life does not pause just because you are fed up with your job. But I kept my mouth shut in a moment because she was so worked up, and I figured we could have a calm conversation about it later. Well, figuring it out never actually happened. For the first few days, I gave her space. I figured she would take a long weekend to decompress and then get serious about the job hunt on Monday. Monday came and went, and all she had done was apply to one job that she openly admitted she was not even interested in. Instead, she slept in until almost noon, made herself elaborate breakfasts, and settled into what can only be described as a vacation mindset. She binged entire seasons of shows, spent hours scrolling her phone, and when I gently asked how the job search was going, she would say things like, "I just need a little more time to reset," or "I'm trying to figure out what I actually want to do next." All the while, I was still going to work every day, paying my half of the bills, and watching our joint expenses creep higher and higher because she was home all day using more electricity, more water, and ordering food deliveries because she didn't feel like cooking. A couple of weeks into this, my patience was already starting to wear thin. I asked her if she had any kind of timeline in mind for getting serious about finding something new. She got defensive and said she just needed me to be supportive and not pressure her. I bit my tongue because I did not want to start a fight, but I was getting really frustrated. It was not like she had a massive savings account to float her through unemployment. We both lived paycheck to paycheck with only a little buffer, and I could already see that buffer draining fast. Then the first of the month rolled around. Rent was due, and I reminded her, just like I always do, because we usually both send our halves to the landlord separately. That is when she dropped another bomb on me. She did not have her half. She just casually told me she needed me to cover it this month until she got back on her feet. No apology, no real acknowledgement of how unfair that was, just a totally casual expectation that I would step up and take over her financial responsibilities. That was the moment something in me snapped. I asked her point blank when exactly she expected to get back on her feet if she was not actively looking for jobs or making any serious effort to find income. She admitted almost proudly that she had not really been looking very hard. She said she needed more time to decompress because her old job was so toxic that she was still processing it. That is when I told her that I was not going to be the only one financially supporting us, especially when this entire situation was a result of her own impulsive decision to quit without a plan. She got really upset, accusing me of not supporting her and saying that if I really cared about her, I would want to help her through this difficult time. I told her I was willing to be supportive emotionally, but financial support was a different conversation. In my mind, being a team does not mean one person gets to make reckless decisions and then expect the other to just absorb all the consequences. A team means both people pull their weight, and right now, I'm the only one doing any pulling. The conversation escalated from there. She said I was being selfish and that she would never hesitate to help me if the roles were reversed. I pointed out that if I quit my job tomorrow with no warning, no savings, and no plan, I would expect her to be just as frustrated with me as I am with her right now. She brushed that off, saying it was different because she was unhappy and needed to prioritize her mental health. I told her that prioritizing her mental health does not mean checking out of adult responsibilities entirely and expecting me to carry everything. Since then, things have been incredibly tense between us. She has been cold and distant, and every interaction feels strained. I feel like I am being painted as the villain for refusing to just take on her financial burden indefinitely. I did not sign up to be anyone's financial safety net, especially not when the whole situation was entirely preventable. I understand needing a break. I understand needing to leave a toxic job. What I do not understand is making a unilateral decision that directly impacts both of us and then expecting me to clean up the mess without question. Now I am wondering if I was too harsh or if I should have just sucked it up and covered for her temporarily to keep the peace. But at the same time, I cannot shake the feeling that I am being taken advantage of. Update 1. After I wrote my original post, I spent a lot of time thinking about everything. The tension in the apartment was thick enough to cut with a knife, and honestly, I was exhausted. Every conversation with Sarah felt like walking into a minefield. One offhand comment about money, work, or anything remotely related to adult responsibilities, and she would either snap at me or withdraw completely. We were supposed to be partners, and even though I was angry, I still felt like if we were in this together, we should at least try to work through it together. One evening after work, I sat down with her old resume, and I rebuilt it. Then, I went into her LinkedIn account, updated her work history, and added some skills. I set her up on several job sites, created profiles for her, and customized a few searches so she could get alerts for jobs that matched her skills. I thought if I took the burden of the process off her shoulders, she would feel less overwhelmed and actually start engaging with it. At first, she seemed touched. She said it was sweet that I was helping her, and for a brief moment, I thought we had turned a corner. That optimism didn't last long. What started as appreciation very quickly turned into irritation. Every time I suggested she follow up, her whole mood shifted. She would sigh loudly, roll her eyes, and make excuses about how she wasn't sure if the job was the right fit or how she wasn't in the right headspace. I didn't want to be overbearing, and I knew the transition from being employed to job hunting was tough. But it became clear pretty quickly that this wasn't just about her needing a bit of time. It was full-blown resistance. She didn't want any job. She started talking more and more about how she couldn't stomach the idea of going. She felt like working a traditional job was so crushing and that she needed time to figure out her passion, which, by the way, was a passion she couldn't actually identify. The more I tried to gently guide her toward at least getting something temporary, freelance work, part-time, even remote admin jobs, the more she dug in her heels. It was like any suggestion that involved effort or responsibility instantly triggered a wall of excuses. At that point, I realized that this wasn't going to be a quick fix. This wasn't just burnout or needing a career change. This was her fully rejecting the concept of working altogether, at least for now. And the worst part was, I was expected to keep us afloat while she figured it out. I sat down and told her directly that I was willing to cover her half of the rent and bills for another month, but I was going to keep track of everything I paid for. It was just reality. I started writing down every bill I paid on her behalf, every grocery run I covered, every little expense I absorbed, so that we could revisit it later when she was back on her feet. She was stunned, and she just stared at me like I had said something unforgivable. She asked if I was seriously, and I said yes. I wasn't doing it to punish her. I was doing it so we could be honest and transparent when things stabilized. She said there should be no debt in a relationship, that couples should help each other without keeping score, that I was treating her like a roommate instead of my partner, and by tracking every penny made her feel like a burden instead of a partner. I told her that love doesn't cancel responsibility, but it doesn't seem to resonate. Update 2. One random Tuesday evening, I came home from work exhausted and already bracing myself for the usual tense silence or passive-aggressive commentary that had become the soundtrack of our apartment. But instead of finding her curled up on the couch with some mindless show playing in the background, I found her sitting there with her laptop. I noticed what was actually on her screen, a job search site. She told me that her best friend had just landed a new job. It wasn't just any job either. It was fully remote, the kind of flexible, well-paid position Sarah had spent so much time dreaming about. Her friend sent her the link and added one simple line: "You should try this." Sarah admitted, in a rare moment of unfiltered honesty, that she filled out the application more out of spite than hope. It was almost performative, a way to prove to herself and to me that she was right, that these so-called dream jobs were a myth. But the universe, in one of those cruel, ironic twists, didn't play along. She got a response almost immediately, not an automated rejection, not a ghosting, but an actual reply from an actual person inviting her to interview. A week later, she got the offer. It wasn't the perfect dream job, the kind where every day feels fulfilling and every task aligns with some higher personal calling, but it was damn close. Part-time to start, with the option to go full-time, fully remote, flexible hours, and a salary higher than what she was making at her old job. With the job offer came a shift, not just in our finances but in the atmosphere. We were cautious with each other, both aware that the damage from the last few months wasn't going to vanish overnight. But for the first time in what felt like forever, we were on the same side again. She admitted that she had been wrong to shove everything onto me, to expect me to absorb all the stress and responsibility. She said she hadn't realized just how much she was asking of me until she saw that even her closest friend had moved forward instead of pausing indefinitely. One of the most surprising parts of all of this was what came next. I had assumed, after all the fights about money and fairness, that even bringing up the idea of repaying what I had covered would be opening a fresh wound. But before I could even raise the topic, Sarah did. She said she wanted to set up a clear plan to repay her share of the expenses I had covered during her unemployment, not as some formal debt, not with interest or deadlines, but as a way to restore balance. Not just to our bank accounts, but to how we saw each other. She said she wanted us to feel like equals again, and part of that meant acknowledging that while she needed help, that help came at a cost, and it was only fair to even the scales. We sat down together, went through every bill, every receipt, every transfer I had made on her behalf, and created a shared document. Not a ledger, not a scorecard, but a transparent record of what we owed each other. It was the first time in our entire relationship that we had talked about money this openly, with no sugarcoating, no dodging, no vague promises that it would all work out eventually. And it felt good, uncomfortable sometimes, awkward, but good. It felt like something we should have done years ago, long before any of this spiraled into resentment and passive-aggressive tally-keeping. It's not perfect now, and it probably never will be, but there's a sense that we've both seen the ugliest, most selfish versions of each other and still decided to stay. That counts for something. I hope it stays that way.